Quarterback Joe Milton is headed for Dallas, Texas, but did the New England Patriots undersell a potentially valuable asset? Stick around, you're about to be locked in to the Locked On Patriots podcast.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxborough faithful. Thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. I am your host, Mike Debate. I cover your New England Patriots for the Locked On Podcast Network. Reach out to me. Let me know what's on your mind on X at MDABATENFL. While you're out there showing some love to Locked On Patriots social media style, follow our X account as well at LO_Patriots. And you can always catch me over where the skies are blue, over on Blue Sky at MDABATENFL.bsky.social. And of course, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Pats fans, after weeks of trade speculation, your New England Patriots have indeed agreed to trade backup quarterback Joe Milton III, the man they acquired as a sixth-round selection and number 193 overall in the 2024 NFL Draft, to the Dallas Cowboys. And by now you've seen multiple reports out there indicating that New England is getting a fifth-round pick that is number 171 overall for Milton and a seventh-rounder that equates to number 217. Milton spent a majority of his rookie season as the Patriots' third-string quarterback behind Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett. However, he did see extensive action in his in-game debut in Week 18 against the Buffalo Bills. And largely based on that performance, Pats fan base developed a, how shall we say, pseudo-love affair with Joe Milton this offseason. And that has many Patriots fans upset today about this trade. A lot of you out there feeling that the team did not get fair value in return for Milton's services. Well, we're going to discuss that very topic today, as well as what the Dallas Cowboys are getting in Joe Milton. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the current quarterback room as constituted in Foxborough for your New England Patriots and the task of continuing to develop Drake Maye, which ultimately is going to lay at the feet of offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels and quarterbacks coach Ashton Grant. And both of those gentlemen just happened to meet with the media on Thursday afternoon at Gillette Stadium. So Pats fans, stay locked in. An action-packed episode on tap here today. And to assist me in breaking it all down is our resident voice of reason. And we need that reason so badly today. My Patriots Paisan, columnist extraordinaire at PatsFans.com, and the co-host of Patriots 4th and 2, my good friend Steve Balestrieri. Thanks for joining me today, bud. Welcome back to the pod.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, once again, there's never a dull day in Foxborough. And now the Patriots are without Joe Milton.
Yeah, and within the last 24 to 48 hours is when it really started to become a possibility. And lo and behold, Thursday morning, the news breaks that Joe Milton is indeed on his way to Big D. Steve, normally trading a sixth-round backup quarterback for a fifth-rounder is usually met with pretty positive reaction from the fan base. But we're not exactly dealing with your run-of-the-mill backup quarterback when it comes to Joe Milton and his impact on the New England Patriots this past year. We've said it several times here on the pod. This kid is a dynamic talent. No one's denying that. Rocket for an arm. Watched him personally in training camp last year. This kid is a delight to watch throw the football. He's got the ability to be a dual threat. He can make plays with his legs when the need arises. So naturally, when you have a talent like that and Patriots fans hear that Milton is potentially on the trading block because there's a logjam at the position or maybe Milton wants to go elsewhere, they believe that the Pats could go out there and get as high as a third rounder, maybe a fourth at the worst. Fifth was kind of like an afterthought where you look at it and say, for the talent we're giving up, not worth it to bring something back. We're just, going to roll the dice and take our chances and leave Joe Milton in the quarterback room, especially when you have a number of quarterback-hungry teams out there that are looking to make something happen. But they traded Milton to Dallas based on his desires for a new destination. So, Steve, there's a lot to unpack there. A lot of reasonable wisdom and counsel is needed here. What is your assessment of this trade from Joe Milton over to them Cowboys down in Dallas?
Yeah, to me, I mean, at first when I heard this, I was like, "Why in the world would you do that?" Because my feeling was, and then you and I have talked about this on here a couple of times, that if somebody wasn't going to basically overpay for Joe, then I wouldn't trade him.
Mm.
I would keep him in the fold as Drake Maye's backup. And apparently, they've made the decision that Josh Dobbs is the backup. And to me, I don't care for that. I would have rather seen Milton do that. But then it came out that he requested a trade because he wants a chance to, from what I heard, start. So, and he specifically asked for the Cowboys because I also read, I think Phil Perry wrote that they made the decision out of respect for Joe's wishes,
Mm-hmm.
that they did have a better offer, but that's where he wanted to go. So, in that vein, now when you see the whole picture, uh, yeah, I understand it. I hate seeing him leave because I think he has a lot of potential, but apparently they made it clear to him that Drake May is the guy here, and I think he might have been a little too hasty in doing that because you never know how things work out, and none of us know, how things are going to work out with May this year. I mean, it could happen that he gets hurt or something early in the season, and Milton would have had the chance to start. But again, with them anointing Dobbs as that, who I've never been a big fan of, I wasn't too happy with that kind of that aspect of it. But it is what it is, and they did him a solid.
Yeah, they indeed did do him a solid. And I'll get back to that in just a moment because I think that that is also something that deserves at least a sharp eye moving forward into the coming weeks and months. But ultimately, I think a lot of people in Patriots Nation are disappointed by this trade right now for all of the reasons that you just outlined. Joe is a dynamic talent. He's exciting to watch. You know that a quarterback's health is always a precarious situation, especially when you're fielding an offensive line that may not be up to the task of providing Drake Maye that type of blanket comfort and that type of protection that he's going to need to stay upright and healthy all season long. It places a lot of emphasis on who you have to back him up in that room. And a lot of Patriots fans felt much more comfortable with Joe Milton in the room than just Josh Dobbs. I think those are all valid concerns. You want to go and take a look at what this kid can do, take a look at the Week 18 footage from last year against the Buffalo Bills. I think that's really when he caught the attention of the national pundits throughout the league. 22 of 29 pass attempts completed, 241 yards, a touchdown, scrambled for a few yards, was able to get a touchdown on the ground. So there is clearly a pro-level pedigree that Joe Milton possesses. He helped lead the Patriots to a 23-16 victory that allowed the Patriots to improve to 4-13 on the season. Ironically, it took him out of the running for the number one overall pick. But look, Joe had the opportunity to play, showcase what he can do. I don't begrudge him in the least for doing what he needed to do, and that's take advantage of the opportunity that's given to you. Because of that, I can understand the ire of Patriots fans being raised by this deal. You see the talent in Milton. You look around and you take reasonable stock of the teams that could use a quarterback, not only with the pro-level experience that he has, but also the potential. And you say, a fifth rounder? Nah, come on. You can do better than that. That's not worth it to move this guy. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment here and try to inject what I believe to be some of the truth of the matter. That fifth rounder, especially when you take under account, like you said, that Milton reportedly wanted to go elsewhere. He asked for a trade. Now, it's still unclear as to whether or not Milton wanted to force his way out before Josh Dobbs walked through the door, or if this was something that he's been cooking up since the final buzzer sounded in the season finale. Depending on which one of those is true, I think it adds a level of context to either scenario that could be interesting to explore. If Milton wanted out right off the bat, then yeah, I mean, you might be looking at a situation where the Patriots knew they were going to have to move him, and they did him solid by giving him over to the Dallas Cowboys. So you take that under account as point one, but then you add to it that the Patriots used the number 193 pick to secure him last year in the 6th round. and essentially you're getting a fifth rounder back, ultimately it's a decent return on investment. I'm not saying a great return, folks, but it's a decent return on investment. It's one that you can walk away from and not feel like you've gotten fleeced. Once again, I will concede that the wild card in all of this out there is the reports about a better offer being on the table. And here's where I'm in full agreement with you, Steve. If that is indeed the case, I've got to agree with the Boston Herald's Andrew Callahan, who tweeted out earlier today that the Patriots need to stop doing this. They did the same thing last year with Matthew Judon and the Falcons and the Bears. Better deal on the table. They dealt him to the area where he wants to go. I understand it's great and it's respectful to be mindful to the player. I'm all for that to a certain point. But to quote The Godfather, my friend, it's not personal. It's strictly business in the NFL. And if it's strictly business, business is going to tell you, take the best offer. That's where I think the Patriots could have some regret here if they left more on the table than they could have got for Joe Milton III.
Yeah, and that's a consideration. But, if it comes down to, 2 or 3 picks above where they were going to be selecting a guy in the 5th round, then I don't have, a major problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure that they took all of this into consideration. But if you're talking 10 or 15 spots, then you're getting into a little different territory at that point. We don't know. I mean, and perhaps the draft capital that someone was offering was better, but it wasn't until 2026. So that's something else, we don't know.
Very good point.
So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, again, I mean, one game does not equal like moving from a 6th rounder to a 3rd rounder. Okay. And we know Buffalo sat a lot of their guys, but at the same time, all we heard all season long was what a great job he was doing with the scout team, and working through the issues that were dropped on him during the draft process last year. We heard all about all these different things and how his accuracy was bad, his footwork was bad, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't show any of that in the one game that he did play. So we have to take it under advisement that, he had worked through all that stuff. So, it's one of those weird things, but the guy wanted to be traded for a chance to quote unquote start. So, I just wonder if there was more to this story. And like you said, was he asking to be traded prior to Dobbs coming in because he wasn't happy with what was going on? And that probably won't come out anytime soon, but you never know.
Yeah, and for all the reasons that we talked about today, Steve, I think this deal is going to continue to be talked about. It's going to continue to be dissected. And at least until the next big Patriot story, this is going to be one that continues to be bandied about and tossed back and forth. But ultimately, Joe Milton is on his way to the Dallas Cowboys. And once again, per reports, this is where he wanted to be, hoping that he's going to lead to a long-term relationship, maybe as the primary backup for Dak Prescott or an eventual starter, like Steve said just a few moments ago. What kind of quarterback can Dallas expect in year 1 and beyond? And how could his performance in Dallas come back to affect the New England Patriots? We're going to discuss all of that and more when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast continues, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On listeners, imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. But getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where GameTime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. With GameTime picks, curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. And here's the thing I love most about GameTime: peace of mind. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Patriots fans, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots as we continue to break down the New England Patriots trade of Joe Milton III to the Dallas Cowboys for Dallas's conditional fifth rounder, pick number 171 in this year's draft. Patriots also sending over a seventh rounder with Milton to the Cowboys. And here today to help us break it all down, understand it, and take some reasonable wisdom and counsel away from the whole situation is my good friend Steve Balestrieri at PatsFans.com. Steve, the Dallas Cowboys are adding Milton to their quarterback room in the hopes of potentially shaping him into a long-term starter. We hear that Joe Milton's desire to be traded was fueled by the opportunity he wanted to start. Maybe immediately, maybe not so immediately, but I think we can both agree that he has a better chance of earning the starting job sooner rather than later in Dallas than he did in New England. New England seems to be firmly entrenched with Drake Maye as their starter. So, in my opinion, I think Joe Milton is going to go to Dallas. He's going to serve as Dak's primary backup right off the bat. And who knows, maybe they do have some insurance if Dak should go down with an injury. Has been known to happen. Dak, unfortunately, has had an extensive injury history in Dallas. But I think Dallas is also proving that by surrendering the fifth-round pick, they have high hopes for him. And they want Joe Milton to be a part of their franchise, maybe for many years to come. Based on that, Steve, I think it may be a couple of years before we really learn the impact of this trade for both sides. So my question to you, my friend, is if the Cowboys can groom Milton into a starter, does this trade all of a sudden become a failure in hindsight, even more so than Patriots fans are acting like it is today? And does that happen even though Drake Maye is firmly entrenched as New England starter for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, and you know what? I wonder how Dak Prescott feels about all this.
Good question.
Because
a fair question.
Joe Milton said supposedly, and we haven't heard it out of his mouth yet, but supposedly he wanted to go to a place where he had a chance to start. And he specifically asked for the Dallas Cowboys. So I wonder how that's going to play with Dak Prescott, who's been their starter for several years. Now, you know, he's at times been absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. And other times he has kind of disappeared and he's had injury issues. So, you know, the Cowboys gave him a ton of money. So, you know, I wonder how that's playing off with him. If Maye is under the impression he's going to have a chance to start, which means quarterback competition, right? So I wonder how that is going to, you know, work out in Dallas's locker room. That's something that we'll have to see. But, you know, if Prescott was to get hurt or actually even beat out by Joe Milton this summer, which I kind of doubt because Dak knows that offense inside and out. So, but you never know. You never know. And so if that was to happen and Joe Milton starts for the Cowboys sometime this year, I wonder if the Patriots are going to look back on this and say, maybe we shouldn't have let him go for a fifth. Because, you know, based on what we saw last year, you know, we all believe this kid can play. And think about it. He's going to go to a different team with, you know, better options than he had last year with the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys clearly have some financial decisions to make, and I think this move factors in, but I think cooler heads will prevail. I think Dallas will keep him on staff this year. I don't think Milton will come in and necessarily outplay him to the point where he believes he's going to start right away, but there are intriguing options there that could make this a little bit more precarious. And it gets me back to my question to you again about the New England Patriots and their buyer's remorse, so to speak, or seller's remorse, I guess, is a better way for me to put it, in terms of dealing him away to the Dallas Cowboys. If, in fact, it does take a couple of years for Milton to become the starter in Dallas, and the Patriots are able to develop Drake Maye with solid options at the backup quarterback position, is there a scenario that you can envision here where you believe that New England could come out looking better than worse based upon the return on investment that Dallas feels they've done?
That's a good question. And I don't know. I mean, unless this 5th round draft pick that they picked up, and this is at the very end of the 5th round, this is the compensatory pick.
Right, number 171, a compensatory pick.
So unless that guy turns into, some kind of Tom Brady-esque, meteoric rise player, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. But also part of me, going back to Dallas, I wonder if this has been in the works for a while with the Patriots and Joe Milton, because just about a week or so ago, I saw where Dak, the Cowboys said he had lost like 20 or 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to slim down and get faster and more athletic. And I'm wondering if they want to go to more of that style of offense. And the reason they were looking at Joe Milton.
Absolutely. And again, this is all about scheme fit. It's all about system fit. Joe Milton is definitely the type of quarterback that you'll want to have in-house if you are moving to that dual threat style. Dak lightening up a little bit, getting a little more athletic, clearly plays into that. So, yeah, I do believe this might have been in the works on both sides, because Dallas has mentioned for quite some time that they've had their eye on Joe Milton throughout the offseason. This is not something where they just decided they wanted to pick up the phone and see if the guy was available. He was a player they looked at that could be a solid fit for the type of offense they want to be running in 2025. So, yeah, once again, it all comes back to the return on investment. Are the Patriots going to feel that they got enough here? Is this the best they could do under the circumstances? Or did the Dallas Cowboys come out ahead, and did Jerry pull a quick one on the New England Patriots and something they'll regret in future years? In the final analysis, Steve, I always try to say that virtue lies in the middle. I always take that page out of Aristotle's book, and I look at this and I say it's going to be at least a couple of years before we know exactly who won this trade, who lost this trade. A lot of these pieces have to fit into their proper place in order for those questions to be answered. So if you're a Patriots fan out there, especially if you're an everydayer of Locked On Patriots, and you're upset by this trade, I understand why you're upset. There are reasons to feel like the Patriots left a lot on the table and potentially didn't get the proper return for someone of Joe Milton's talent. I totally get it. If you're either apathetic or maybe a little bit more sympathetic to the Patriots in this situation, saying Milton didn't want to be there, Mike Vrabel doesn't want guys in this quarterback room that don't want to be there. You're developing a young quarterback. You've got to get guys in there that are willing to be mentors and understand their role as solid backups. Well, I think there's an argument to be made there too. But ultimately, the success of this trade is going to be based on a lot more than just feelings one way or another. So I implore all of you out there, whichever side of the tracks you're walking on right now, give it a chance. Give this front office and this team an opportunity to see what's what, to see what they've got, and then we can make a determination as to what happened in New England on Thursday, April 3rd, 2025, when the Pats sent Joe Milton III over to the Dallas Cowboys. Steve, ultimately, the New England Patriots now need to move on, and they face a quarterback room that includes Drake Maye. It includes Josh Dobbs as his top backup. Josh McDaniels is once again your offensive coordinator. Ashton Grant is your quarterbacks coach, and they both met with the media on Thursday to advise all of us in Patriots Nation of their philosophies when it comes to this New England offense. How will this new quarterback room play into that? And the ultimate question is, how are you going to replace Joe Milton on this roster? We're going to ask our resident voice of reason those very questions when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast wraps up right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patriots fans, thank you for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots as we continue to break down the trade of Joe Milton III over to the Dallas Cowboys. Here today to help me look at this from every angle and providing some much needed reasonable wisdom and counsel is my good friend, my Patriots paisan, Steve Balestrieri of PatsFans.com. Steve, we've talked about Joe Milton and we've talked about the impact that he had in New England, the potential impact that he may have in Dallas, and what it means ultimately for the New England Patriots moving forward. But I think it's interesting that this trade happened on the same day that Josh McDaniels and his offensive coaching staff met with the media at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. Josh looked very familiar up there on that podium, no question about it. But at the same time, I think you also heard a lot of what you expected to hear from Josh in his press conference on Thursday, saying that what happened in the past is in the past. This is a new offense. It's a new quarterback. It's a new situation, and maybe even a new offensive strategy for Josh McDaniels moving forward. Mentioned that he's super excited to work with Drake Maye. He did confirm he's going to be revamping the offense. He talked a lot about incorporating new language, new concepts into his traditional Earhart-Perkins style, or as our good friend Murph likes to say, the Brady McDaniels style. He thinks he's kind of taken a hybrid of Earhart-Perkins and instituted it. I happen to accept that. I think that's a fair assessment. But ultimately, the trade of Joe Milton indicates that the Patriots are clearly more comfortable going with a veteran like Josh Dobbs as a quarterback, too, to help Drake Maye develop into a bona fide pro. In fact, some of the scuttlebutt around the deal that I've been hearing on Thursday is that the Patriots actually told that to Josh Dobbs when he signed with the team last month, that he was coming here to be Drake's primary backup, and they wanted a more veteran presence in this quarterback room that was going to help Drake move forward and really take the reins as the undisputed starter of this team moving forward. If that's the case, do you, as our resident voice of reason here in Pats Nation, have any concerns about the Patriots quarterback room, and how might it affect them not only this year but in subsequent years as the Vrabel-McDaniels regime takes over in Foxborough, especially in this offense?
I like how that sounds, the Vrabel-McDaniels system there. As I said at the outset of the show, I've never been overly fond of Josh Dobbs, even back when he was in college. I was a little surprised that they made that known to him, when he was coming in, that he was going to be the primary backup, because I think, Milton had, to me, a lot more upside. And I get the fact that they wanted a veteran presence there. Makes total sense. But, I don't know. I really don't believe in this guy. Like, granted, if May was to get hurt early in the year, we know that Milton only had that one game. So he would have been, quote unquote, still raw, or like a rookie. But I'm not convinced that Dobbs, can come in and play for several games and take you over that hump, until May would return. Therefore, I'm wondering, does McDaniels see something in Dobbs that, hey, in our system, he's going to be a lot better. And that's something that we'll have to see. We don't know how Drake is going to fit in McDaniel's system yet, because they haven't got on the field. So there's still a lot of questions there. But, I'm not a big fan of Dobbs being the primary backup. But, I hope that I'm proven wrong by Josh.
I think it's an interesting point. And look, I think a lot of Patriots fans will agree with you at this point in saying that they believe that that Joe Milton clearly has the edge when it comes to talent and potential over Josh Dobbs. I also think it was very interesting that you said that potentially Josh McDaniels may see something in Dobbs. Maybe it's not Dobbs specific, but maybe it's more of a veteran quality that Josh is looking for in someone who can mentor Drake Maye and take him to the next level. Josh Dobbs comes in with a serviceable resume. I'm not going to say it's an eye-popping one, but I'm not going to say it's the worst I've ever seen by far. 344 of 549 passing, 3,281 yards, 17 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He's also rushed for 520 yards, 8 trips to the end zone as a rusher. So when you look at that and you look at what he's able to do, he's obviously not someone who's going to come in and threaten Drake Maye's job. He is your solid backup. He's a guy that, you're going to insert only if Drake has injury problems or if there's a situation where he can't make a start for any given reason. So ultimately, I think right now with Dobbs being your primary backup, I think you're looking at a safe option, a veteran option, and maybe someone who's a little bit more willing to be a mentor to Drake in times where he may need some assistance in that quarterback room. And that leads me quite nicely into my final question for you today, Bud, is the Pats do have now arguably a void in that quarterback room. They're going to want to add someone in order to provide a scout team director and maybe even someone that could challenge for a 53-man roster spot each and every week. So in that regard, do you think the Patriots are going to be in the market to do so via the draft? Or do you think they're more likely to stick with the veteran route at this point and go with someone with a little more experience in this room?
I think it'll be, later in the draft, not necessarily before the 5th round. Maybe your 5th round draft pick that you just picked up is a quarterback that, they can develop and, bring in a young guy, run the scout team, learn from Dobbs and May, and McDaniels. And, McDaniels did a good job working with a lot of quarterbacks. It seemed like every year they would draft a quarterback, not necessarily early, but they always seemed to bring a guy in. They would bring him along, and then he'd go on somewhere else. And, some of those guys turned out pretty good.
Yeah,
so
they did.
Yeah. The head coach of the Minnesota Vikings now, he looks like a pretty good dude right now. So, he was one of Tom Brady's backups. And,
absolutely, yeah.
But, I saw where they said the runway is clear for Drake Maye. And, the runway was already clear.
Yeah.
And that makes it seem like, oh, well, we got rid of Milton, so, Drake wouldn't hear the footsteps. And I don't care for that because I think Maye is of the attitude like Brady was. Brady said they drafted a quarterback every year. Trot him up. Let's see what he can do. Of course, Brady didn't want to give up, 2 snaps during practice. So
absolutely. And, it served him well throughout his illustrious career in the NFL. And who knows, maybe a little bit of that dog is in Drake Maye. I happen to agree with you. And I said that previously, that I do believe that Drake is the type of guy that rises to the challenge. He's not going to be intimidated by it. So, yeah, I don't think necessarily they shipped out Joe Milton because Drake wasn't going to respond well to having another young quarterback in this room. I think this was more about maybe Josh McDaniels' offense and how he's going to be able to develop Drake Maye, and maybe at this point, veteran options maybe the better fit, at least in the short term, for helping him learn what can be a very complex offense. I think that's another point that Patriots fans need to remember. Just because Josh has admitted to and is willing to incorporate more modern aspects into his offense, he's still going to go back to what he's most comfortable with and what he knows works well on a football field. And some of that is vintage. It's retro. And that's exactly what he's going to trot out there. It can be a complex system for quarterbacks. It can definitely be a complex system for receivers and pass catchers. So in that vein, New England now is going to have to make a choice as to which type of player they're going to be rostering. And maybe they feel that a veteran presence is just a better fit at this point in time. But, Steve, only time will tell whether or not the trade of Joe Milton is something the Patriots live to regret or whether or not it's something they can live with for the remainder of their time. But folks, we will continue to monitor each and every coming and going out of Foxborough. There's never a dull moment, and who knows, at any given day, a Patriot could become an expatriate, or a new player could be walking through those doors. We're going to cover it right here for you on Locked On Patriots, and always along for the ride with me to help lend the wisdom, the counsel, and the insight the way only he can is my good friend, the uber intelligent Steve Balestrieri of PatsFans.com and Patriots 4th and 2. I want to thank you for dropping by the pod today and helping to sort through all of the Milton madness here in Foxborough. In the meantime, I want to give a major tip of the cap and a thank you to all of you everydayers out there who continue to make Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. I also want to give a major tip of the cap and a big thanks to my good friend Steve Balestrieri for joining me here today. And on behalf of my good friend, I am Mike Debate, reminding all of you to stay safe, to stay well, to be the change that you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow on Locked On Patriots.